Think you know Star Trek? Think again. There are hidden secrets, behind-the-scenes drama, and jaw-dropping moments buried in plain sight. Stuff even die-hard fans totally missed. From character quirks that reveal dark truths to scenes that were almost never supposed to air. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Curious? You should be. Stick around because we're revealing the most mind-blowing things you never noticed about Star Trek, but won't stop thinking about once you do. You could watch Star Trek for years and still miss the secrets hiding in plain sight. That's the magic of a universe so vast and layered. It's not just the starships and alien worlds, but the hidden stories etched into its very creation. While fans have spent decades obsessing over warp speeds and transporter tech, they've overlooked some of the most fascinating truths behind the camera. Today, we're peeling back the polished veneer to reveal the overlooked detail, the accidents of history that turned into pop culture legends, and the genius improvisation that gave Star Trek its timeless charm. Take Scotty, the iconic chief engineer who could restart the warp core with a wrench and some tough love. What most fans never realized was that James Doohan, the man behind The Miracle Worker, carried a silent story of his own, one he never spoke of during his on-screen hours. Long before he became a Starfleet icon, Doohan was a real-life hero. He landed on Juno Beach during D-Day, bullets ripping through his body, one of them shattering his right middle finger. A cigarette case in his pocket deflected a shot that would have ended everything, but the finger was gone. And here's where the brilliance comes in. No one watching the show noticed. Directors adjusted camera angles, kept his right hand hidden or cropped, and even built props to match his limitation. It was subtle, deliberate, and masterfully done. You've seen him fix a warp drive, but did you ever realize he did it all with one finger missing? Just when you thought you knew Star Trek inside out, here comes another revelation. Alien props that were anything but alien. Look closely at those exotic liquor bottles from Strange New Worlds. Many were just old whiskey bottles dressed for the occasion. One standout example? The bottle used for Saurian branding. Turns out it was a commemorative George Dickel Tennessee whiskey bottle from 1964, designed to look like a powder horn. The design barely changed. It didn't need to. The brown glass was just strange enough to pass as something extraterrestrial. Collectors now hunt these bottles like buried treasure, unaware they were born from the simplest kind of genius, making do with what was already lying around. This wasn't just about saving money, it was about transforming the ordinary into something unforgettable. And then there's a feud that never made it into the scripts, but shaped the way millions of viewers saw the show. William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, two titans of the Star Trek galaxy, were caught in a quiet tug-of-war over something as mundane as font size. Yes, font size. According to internal memos, Nimoy's name had to appear no smaller than 75% of Shatner's in the opening credit. That one clause tells a bigger story, of egos, contract, and a delicate balance of power. Behind the polished surface of every scene was a dance of negotiation. The tension simmered behind smiles and handshake, and it didn't end when the show wrapped. Later, Shatner even used a similar clause to claim his spot in the director's chair, after Nimoy got the gig first. The drama wasn't just on screen, it was in the paperwork. You think Star Trek is all high-tech and advanced materials? Think again. Klingon armor, rugged, battle-worn, fearsome, wasn't forged in some Hollywood lab. It was made, in part, from bubble wrap, painted, reused, strategically layered. It first showed up on the costume of Commander Kor, and if you blinked, you'd never have guessed. But that was the genius of the show's costume designer, Bill Theiss. He believed in recontextualizing ordinary material, turning them into something extraordinary. A simple roll of sealed air could become a belt fit for a galactic warlord. The textures, the sheen, it all added up to something alien, something timeless. What's wild is how well it worked. Nobody noticed. For decades, that bubble wrap blended into the world of Klingon might, and fans never blinked twice. And if you thought that was the peak of creative corner cutting, brace yourself. The very first alien ship to confront the Enterprise, the massive, menacing Fesarius, wasn't made from steel, glass, or futuristic alloy. It was ping-pong ball, cut in half, glued onto a sphere, lit with dimmers to give it a glowing aura. It sounds ridiculous, but on screen, it worked. It pulsed, it hovered, it terrified. Wah Chung and Matt Jeffries turned a handful of sports equipment and plaster into the most advanced ship Starfleet had ever seen. The final cost? Over $17,000. The illusion? priceless. When CBS remastered the episode in 2006, they could have done anything with CGI, but they stayed true to the original, preserving the illusion crafted in a 1960s effects shot. So here's the twist: those awe-inspiring Star Trek moments that felt so grand, so epic, so futuristic. Many of them were born out of constraint, necessity, and a kind of desperation that pushed the crew to imagine more with less. That ingenuity is what makes the franchise more than just science fiction. It's a masterclass in storytelling, illusion, and resilience. And now that you know these secrets, try watching the show again. See if you can ever look at Scotty's hands, a Klingon belt, or the shimmering hull of a starship the same way. Something tells us you won't. It's wild how something meant to last just 3 seasons still manages to stump even the most eagle-eyed fans today. Star Trek wasn't just ahead of its time, it was constantly reinventing how science fiction could look and feel on a shoestring budget. But even in a universe of warp drives and Vulcan logic, some slip-ups were too entertaining to ignore. And just wait till we get to number 1. Your jaw might hit the floor. Back in the early days of Kirk's missions, in one episode meant to define the series, something very strange was chiseled into stone. Literally, during Where No Man Has Gone Before, when Kirk's friend Gary Mitchell suddenly gains extraordinary powers and goes full God mode, he does something eerie. He creates a gravestone for Captain Kirk, but etched into that headstone isn't the name fans know. It reads James R. Kirk. The issue? Kirk's middle name has always been Tiberia. That little R sparked decades of fan theory. And here's the kicker: this wasn't some sneaky plot twist. It was just a production oversight, one so obvious that you can't help but wonder, how did that slip past everyone? Even when the show was digitally remastered years later, the team debated fixing the tombstone. But the amount of digital editing needed was reportedly ridiculous, so they left it as is. Gene Roddenberry later offered a poetic explanation. Mitchell, despite his powers, was still human. He simply got it wrong. It's a goof that somehow fits perfectly with the chaos of the cosmos. And then there's the magic behind the stars themselves. You remember those classic shots of the Enterprise gliding across the galaxy? It turns out the shimmering backdrop wasn't CGI, because CGI didn't exist. The team behind the scenes used an Oxbury optical printer to pull off something truly mesmerizing. They painted tiny stars on a white board, filmed it while shifting the camera in multiple directions, then layered each movement to simulate speed and depth. The illusion? A ship hurtling through space at impossible velocity. But if you knew how much effort went into just a few seconds of that footage, sometimes days of careful shooting, it would blow your mind. They even punched holes in black paper, backlit them, and used colored filters to give the stars different hues and dimensions. It was an art form, not just a trick. And while most viewers never noticed, every flicker of starlight was crafted with absolute precision. There's something nostalgic about that kind of dedication. It's a lost craft in today's digital age. But sometimes, shortcuts were the only way to keep the show on air. In some episodes, sharp-eyed fans noticed something wasn't quite right about the Enterprise. The ship's registry, normally NCC 1701, appeared backward. And no, it wasn't a mirror universe. The production team had flipped the footage intentionally. Why? To hide things like Earth or other mistakes in the background that couldn't be reshot. Reversing the shot solved the problem, but also flipped the ship. Fans spotted it instantly. That kind of obsessive attention is part of what made the Star Trek community legendary. And it didn't stop at flipped ship. One of the most misunderstood elements of the original series is right there on their uniforms. That little arrowhead badge Kirk wore? For years, fans assumed it was the symbol of all Starfleet officers. But during the original series, each starship had its own emblem. The crew of the USS Exeter, for example, wore a completely different design. So did engineers on Starbase Station. It wasn't until years later, after the Enterprise's missions became the stuff of in-universe legend, that the arrowhead was adopted fleet-wide. It was Starfleet's way of honoring Kirk's crew. That simple design became a symbol of legacy, and of how one ship changed everything. And then there's a crossover that feels almost too surreal to believe. Ever watched The Andy Griffith Show? Well, Mayberry wasn't just a sleepy southern town. It also doubled as Alien Worlds on Star Trek. That same stretch of small-town America where Sheriff Andy kept the peace, It became the backdrop for episodes like Miri and The City on the Edge of Forever. Look close, and you'll even spot Floyd's Barbershop and the Mayberry Hotel. It's one of those Hollywood quirks that makes you grin and say, "No way," but it's true. Budget constraints pushed the team to reuse whatever sets they could. The City on the Edge of Forever went so far over budget that the director had to shoot everything on NBC's existing backlot. They filmed day and night, reimagining a small-town set as 1930s New York, with nothing but creative camera work and a bit of redressing. It's a perfect example of turning limitations into legend. And just when you think you've seen it all, something small catches your eye. Look closely at the pipes running through the corridors of the Enterprise. They're labeled GNDN. What does that even mean? Well, insiders on the production crew admitted it was an inside joke. Goes nowhere, does nothing. A playful wink from the set designers that managed to sneak its way into Star Trek lore. Sometimes the most unforgettable details are the ones never meant to be noticed. Stick around, because the closer we get to number 1, the more unbelievable it gets. These aren't just mistakes or behind-the-scenes secrets. They're pieces of a puzzle that made Star Trek the cultural juggernaut it is today. And trust us, the next one? It'll leave you wondering how it stayed hidden for this long. Some jokes are so subtle, they don't reveal themselves until decades later. That's exactly what happened with one of Star Trek's cleverest Easter eggs, one so quietly embedded in the design of the Enterprise that even the most dedicated fans took years to uncover it. Hidden in plain sight, pipes labeled with the cryptic acronym GNDN weren't meant to confuse. They were inside jokes for the crew. Goes nowhere, does nothing. It was a sly wink from the set designer. While these labels looked like serious tech jargon, they marked purely decorative features. As filming wore on, GNDN became a running gag, transforming into an unofficial tradition. And here's the twist. Fans still debate whether those markings ever actually appeared on screen. But legacy isn't about proof, it's about continuity. And future Trek productions honored that joke anyway, preserving it as a sacred detail of sci-fi history. Then, in a scene from Charlie X, a moment unfolded that's kept fans smiling and rewinding for over 50 years. A boom mic, yes, a full-blown piece of production equipment, makes its grand entrance 6 minutes into the episode, hovering like an uninvited guest just above the frame. While Charlie presents a gift to Yeoman Rand, the boom mic sneaks in, unapologetically bobbing around. In the 60s, with limited space, hurried shoots, and no CGI lifelines, such slip-ups made it into the final cut. But far from being embarrassing relics, they're now cherished gems. They make us feel connected to the crew behind the scenes and to the era where imagination and determination had to outshine technical glitches. For fans, these imperfections are almost a rite of passage. Catching one feels like you've cracked a code few others noticed. In Where No Man Has Gone Before, Star Trek gave us another unintended peek behind the curtain. During the climactic clash between Kirk and a power-hungry Gary Mitchell, eagle-eyed viewers noticed something odd: scaffolding and lighting rigs peeking into the corners of wide-angle shot. In a scene meant to immerse viewers in a distant galaxy, the presence of everyday stage gear was a jolt of reality. Electric cables snaked across the studio floor, betraying the humble setup behind the otherworldly drama. But here's what's incredible. Despite these reveals, Star Trek didn't lose its magic. In fact, knowing how they stretched their resources only deepens the respect. The limitations didn't hold them back. They made the creative triumphs all the more impressive. There's something powerful about watching a crew build a universe with plywood lights and vision. The illusion wavered again in The Galileo 7, a high-stakes episode that had Spock leading a stranded shuttle crew. As he turns inside the cramped compartment, viewers catch a blink-and-you-miss-it shot of the set's edge, an unintentional invitation into the backstage world. In another emotional scene, as McCoy and Boma carry Gaetano's body, the top of the blue set backdrop slips into view. It was a fragile balance, trying to maintain a fantasy world with walls that sometimes moved if you bumped them too hard. Even the rocky alien terrain couldn't escape scrutiny. One well-aimed spear caused a chunk of styrofoam to flake off, dissolving the illusion in an instant. But these slips didn't take away from the storytelling. They added to it. The vulnerability of the production mirrored the vulnerability of the characters, and the audience stayed right there, captivated. Errand of Mercy gave us one final reminder that the line between imagination and reality is razor thin. In the heat of a Klingon attack, viewers spotted raw, unpainted wood at the base of the set. Paint drip, crash mats, and actor floor marks followed. For a moment, the carefully built world of Star Trek stood exposed, revealing the framework that supported its futuristic facade. Yet instead of disrupting the experience, it made the whole thing feel more intimate. This wasn't just a show. It was a labor of love, a work of craft where every mark, every mistake, hinted at the hands who made it possible. And then there's William Shatner, the face of Captain Kirk, the voice of command. But beyond the bridge of the Enterprise lies a real-life tale of wealth, reinvention, and calculated move. Shatner's financial legacy reads like a masterclass in staying power. He's owned several luxury cars over the years, from Bentleys to Teslas, and is particularly known for his custom-built Rivian truck and past love for the Aston Martin DB7. His watch collection includes a rare Omega Speedmaster moonwatch and several Rolex models, including a classic Submariner. His real estate portfolio spans decades, with his longtime Studio City home selling for millions, and recent investments in equestrian properties across California. Private jets, he's frequently flown chartered but avoids direct ownership, preferring to lease for flexibility. Shatner's entrepreneurial streak includes voiceover work, commercials, most famously for Priceline, and a rumored equity stake that reportedly earned him tens of millions. He's also ventured into tech startups and authored several best-selling books. Insurance, he's publicly spoken about comprehensive health and long-term care coverage, plus specialized policies protecting intellectual property and personal branding. His strategy? Diversify, stay relevant, and always control the narrative. His biggest lesson: don't just be the brand, own it. From forgotten set pieces to financial empires, Hollywood's legends aren't just defined by what they showed on screen, but by what they navigated off-camera. These glitches and gags were never flawed. They were fingerprints, proof that behind every starship corridor and every dramatic line, there were creatives problem-solving, improvising, and believing in something bigger. And through every blooper and every comeback, they built a legacy that couldn't be edited out. Want to discover more stories hidden behind the curtain? The next video is already waiting. Click now and enter the next layer of Hollywood's secret history. And there you have it, proof that Star Trek still has layers fans are only beginning to uncover. From Spock's hidden backstory and the real reason behind Uhura's earpiece, to the secret cameos and unexpected budget hacks that shaped an entire universe, this show was light years ahead of its time, both in imagination and innovation. Who knew a simple swoosh sound effect would become one of the most iconic audio cues in sci-fi history, or that the Enterprise bridge design ended up influencing real NASA engineering? And let's not forget those wild behind-the-scenes decisions, like casting choices that almost went very differently, and the surprising everyday tech that inspired future gadgets. Star Trek wasn't just storytelling, it was prophecy wrapped in phasers and philosophy. If you caught yourself saying, "Wait, what?" at least once during this video, then yeah, you're our kind of people. Go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, drop a comment with your favorite fact, or one we might have missed, and be sure to subscribe. We've got more coming. Deep dives into forgotten legends, unsung heroes, and pop culture stories you thought you knew. Until now, and trust us, if you thought Star Trek was full of surprises, wait until you see what we've got next. Spoiler alert, it's going to be just as boldly unexpected, because in the end, Star Trek didn't just go where no one had gone before. It took all of us there too. It made us believe in the future, in possibility, and in the power of a great story told at warp speed. Until next time, live long, stay curious, and hit that subscribe button like it's a red alert.